Hello guys, welcome back. In today's session we will be discussing about JSX, which is JavaScript XML. In this session we will be discussing about JavaScript XML introduction, how JSX are used in React components, JSX attributes, their conditional rendering in React components and expressions. Along with that, we will talk about JSX cascadings or styles in React component. Basically, JSX are generally written in React components and any other scripting language as well, because JSX is a preprocessor that adds some XML syntax to JavaScript. In other terms, we can call it as a syntactical sugar to the JavaScript. JSX helps us to create a virtual DOM by returning the HTML along with the scripting along to be implemented by the XML. We can use React without JSX also, but JSX makes a React a lot more elegant and implement it in the XML pattern, which is easy to write and understand, and also it's faster. JSX is faster because it performs some optimization during compilation. Whatever JSX syntax you write, that JSX syntax is actually converted or compiled into the JavaScript, pure JavaScript. Let's say if you write h2 element in JSX syntax, it actually compile that in the JavaScript pattern or a language, where we use a create element method to create any h2 element in HTML. JSX is type safe, thus errors can caught during compilation. Errors are the most implemented part of the scripting or any programming languages. JSX shows you the compile time and erroneous errors at the same time when the compilation takes place. So this is an add-on feature of JSX. JSX is basically easier and faster to write the template because some XML syntactical sugar is being added to the JavaScript and more familiar with the HTML because it communicates in the terms of tags. XML consider the user-defined tags, whether the HTML consider the predefined tags. So it gives a syntactical sugar to the markup language to the JavaScript. Let's understand with practical demonstrations. In our previous session, we had created a React Fundamentals project in which we discussed that under the SRC folder, we have index.js, which is the entry point of React application, and using the React DOM, which is a package already installed during the creation of the application using create React DOM, the app component gets rendered as a root component. This add component will actually display its content to this get element by ID root. When I'll see this get element by ID root, within the same repository, we have a public folder where index.html is placed, as I discussed earlier, which is a page template that renders the React component. Once I'll open this index.html, here it looks like a similar HTML syntaxes where we have a div which has an ID property, ID attribute which has root name. So this entire index.js element will be rendered into this root. Post that, as we discussed, the root component is the app component. In SRC folder, we have app.js, which is our initial root component. We can see that here we have a class component. Under this, the render lifecycle method is executed that returns the entire JSX syntax or the markup tag. Once, if I remove this and I would like to write down my own implemented HTML to be executed as a part of the component, I'll simply remove this and I'll try to write down a div under which I simply write down hello world. Now if I execute this React project, I just render this with npm start. So I'll see that this div is actually returning hello world. This entire return JSX, which is a JavaScript XML, will be returned by this component when this component will be rendered to this root component actually. So once this application gets executed successfully, I'll get this hello world. That if I want the multi-line elements to be returned, if I simply go to my app.js and I write, rather than this div, I'll simply write h1 hello world and I write a second element h3. This is my root component. Once I'll write more than one element into this JSX syntax, the first rule says that JSX should have one parent element that gets returned by this render method. So when you have nested elements or more than one elements in one JSX, we need to wrap it within a container, one container. Most probably that container should be div. Post that, I can simply wrap this h1 and h3 element into the div. So that's what we discussed. If we have more than one element in one JSX return, then we need to wrap it with one container element. We most probably use div as a wrapper for any multiple elements in JSX to be used in React component. Post that, I'll simply go and check my both elements gets rendered successfully. This is how we write the JSX in our React components. We further have some rules to use or write the JSX. Next we have JSX attributes. In JSX attributes, we use the tags which have a tag name, attribute and their children. If an attribute value is enclosed in curly braces or quotes, then the value is string. But if we wrap the value in curly braces, then the value is enclosed as a JavaScript expression in terms of React component. Just like this, we have two elements. One is div and another is myCounter. Here div is an HTML element and myCounter is another React component. In div element, we have an attribute class name and its value which is written in double quotes. As we discussed, if an attribute value is enclosed in quotes, it is actually a string. But when we do not write any attribute in double quotes, such as we have a count attribute, and this attribute is not written in double quotes or single quotes, it is written in curly braces. This is actually implemented as in JavaScript expressions. Now, further we will be soon creating the multiple components in one React project and we will render in this way. Now understand what is JSX expression basically. JSX expression needs to wrap within curly braces. You can write it into your nested elements as well as you can directly write it into your parent component as well. For example, if I simply go to this element where we have a p tag, under this p tag I just wanted to write down one expression where I just wanted to calculate 10 plus 20. I'll simply write this calculation or an expression in curly braces. So once I'll see over my render, 30 is the output. JSX expression does not encapsulate the conditional constructs. Thus, the conditions like if, else, nested if, else are not allowed. If you wish to write down any conditions or conditional constructs for making some decisions, you can simply use the conditional or ternary operator, which is a question mark operator. Such as if I go to my project and here I create one variable outside this render. Let's say I'm having var num equals to 5. I should use it inside the render actually. Afterwards, I would like to make some decisions. I say if num is greater than 0, make some ternary decision and return positive. Otherwise, return not positive. I hope we are aware about this syntax. First, we write the condition. After writing the condition, we make a question mark, which is a ternary operator. If this condition is true, then just after this question mark, the expression that is returned will be your output. Otherwise, just after the colon, whatever rendering you want, you just display it over here. So once I'll save this and I'll go back to my browser, I can see the output is positive because num is 5 and 5 is greater than 0. Simply, if I write this 5 as -5 and I'll just save this and I'll see the output is not positive. So whenever you write some conditions or you wish to make some decisions in your component, you can use the ternary operators. Conditional constructs are not allowed. After that, we also do some styling or to use some inline styles or the cascading implementations in our React component. JSX styles with both ways, inline styles, also the embedded styles or external style sheets as well. External style sheet I already discussed. If you wish to write some cascading for this app component, I have this app.css and I just import this app.css into my app component and I can use those style sheets here. But sometimes we require the inline styles. Then in that case, we just need to simply remember one rule. While using the inline styles, we need to use the camel case. Camel case means when we start writing any tag, the first character of the starting of the property should be in lowercase, and in between wherever the differentiation would be required, we just write it with the capital case. Simply go to the component and start writing your style sheets here. I'll simply go to my component and I'll just write it inside this render method, just like this var my style. I'll write few styles where I say font size is 20 pixels and color is somehow navy. We should write down this color in quotes. We should separate the properties by comma. Here we can see that while writing the inline styles, we need to use the camel case. In generally cascading, font size is written as font hyphen size, but where I want an hyphen, I separated that property name with the capital S. That is known as a camel case. React will automatically append the px, which is a pixel, to make this number on the specific elements. And then color is as it is written in the single quotes, whichever color you want to be applied in your style. Post that, just go to your element wherever you would like to use this style. Let's say I would like to write down one more P and I just write down here footer here and I just simply append the style sheets, inline style sheets using the style property. As we discussed, if I write this into the double quotes or single quotes, it is a string. But if I write this into the curly braces, it would be the expression. And just write on the style that you have append into your component. I'll simply go and I'll see this footer here is displayed blue in color. And if you would like to make this size more bigger, I can simply see the differences which I made some changes into my component. So by this way, React recommends some inline styles, or if you would like some external style sheets to be implemented, create a separate CSS, import that CSS into your React component and use that. Later we have some other cases as well. If you would wish to make some single line comment, the single line comment looks like, I'll just simply write down single line comment. There is a shortcut key in Visual Studio Code, Control / and here I can see that 1/* asterisk, whatever statement or a comment you write, but you need to keep your entire comment inside the expression. It comes by default. If you have multi-line comments, line 1, line 2 and line 3, and you would like to comment these 3 lines together, just select this and use a shortcut Control /. Otherwise you can just write it manually as well. It will keep your entire comment into the curly braces. Along with that, it will separate it with the / asterisk and asterisk / ended by that. So when writing comments, we need to put curly brackets. When we want to write comments within children's sections of a tag, it is a good practice to always use curly braces when writing comments, since it is so consistent when writing the application project implementation as well. So that's what we discussed. React component starts with the uppercase. We need to wrap the HTML elements with one container element, that is a root element inside the JSX syntax. JavaScript expressions can be used inside of JSX using the curly braces. It is a good practice to always use curly braces when writing the comments, whether it is a single line comment or multi-line comment. While writing the inline styles, we need to write down the style properties in camel case syntax. We should use the class name and HTML name for XML attribute names instead of class and for. Generally, when we write some cascading classes, we write a class property. For that class property, that property is renamed as class name. Further, we'll be discussing while creating the cascading style sheets in the form of classes and IDs. Thank you so much, guys. Keep learning.